Hello everyone. I think we're gonna get started. I see a few more people coming in, but they'll join in when they can. We're gonna get started because we have quite a few panelists today. So welcome everyone to this webinar, New Ecodesign Measures in Europe. Are there enough for repairers on the grounds? So just a bit of housekeeping rules before we get started, and I can give the floor to the panelists. We will be together for about an hour and a half. This webinar will be recorded so that if you have to jump out at any moment, of course, you'll receive a link and you can watch the rest later. My name is Chloe. I work as a campaigner for the Rate Repair campaign, which organizes this webinar today. We encourage you to ask questions, and you can do so by using the Q&A feature, which is at the bottom of your screen. And you can also vote for questions there. So if you don't necessarily have questions, but you think one that was asked is particularly relevant, you can vote for it and it will go at the top. And I will also encourage you to only use the chat for technical issues and introductions. So of course, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, say where you work, where you come from, and just to answer P's question already, no, we cannot see you because you are an attendee, and as such you will not be able to turn on the video and you will not be able to speak in today's webinar. So we're going to get started. Just so you have an overview of the structure of the webinar. First, we'll have Catherine Meyer, who will present the Rate Repair campaign and the new eco-design measures. Then we'll spend a bit of time with our two professional repairers, Stefan and Steve from Germany and the UK. And we'll end up with Paola, who represents the European Commission today. So Catherine, if you're comfortable sharing your screen, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello. So I assume you can see the screen?
Not yet. For me, it's dark.
1 second. Well, now?
Yes.
Great. So yeah, thank you, Chloe. And hello, everyone. I'm Katrin. I'm working for the German Association Reparatur, which unites many different actors from the repair sector, civil society, the economy, science, and with conditions for raise for what's important. And Untitled Reparatur is a steering group member of the Right to Repair campaign, which is organizing this event today. And the campaign consists of 46 now different actors from 16 countries and is supported by many different individual people. And altogether, we're demanding a universal right to repair in Europe. So we think everybody should be able to repair his or her broken stuff, either by himself or by a professional repairer of one's own choice. Because in order to fix our growing e-waste and waste problems, we really need to use what we have, what we already have for a longer time. And one important way to do that is through repair. But since this is getting increasingly difficult, we need to change, and in order to repair more, we need good design, which means repairable products. We need fair access to spare parts and repair information, and we need informed consumers. When buying a product, they know how well it can be repaired. So 2 years ago, the EU decided to do something about this and agreed on new eco-design standards for different product groups that now for the first time also included obligations for manufacturers to improve the repairability of their products and means to do the repairs. And these new standards now came into force on the 1st of March this year, and this is what we're going to talk about today. So these new standards affect fridges, washing machines, dishwashers and displays. And these new rules that these products must be designed in a way that they can be, that the parts can be disassembled easily. That means with commonly available tools, and that it's also possible to disassemble them without destroying the whole product or other parts of the product. They also say that these spare parts and also repair information need to be made available for a minimum amount of time. That is 7 to 10 years after the last model of the series was placed on the market. And the spare parts need to be delivered after a maximum of 15 working days. I see that my video is frozen. No. So yeah, so these new standards are an important step. It's very good that we do have them, but they do not mean that we have now achieved a right to repair in Europe. And yeah, so there are some limitations to these new standards, these regulations, and I'll talk about them now. So first of all, what you've already seen, they only cover the four product groups I just mentioned. So it's a good first step, but of course we need repair standards to be introduced to more product groups very quickly in order to see real effect for repair in our everyday life. And also very importantly, these rules only apply to those models that are put on the market after the 1st of March 2021. So they do not apply to the fridges and washing machines you already have at home that you've bought before the 1st of March. Then secondly, and also very important, is that these rules specify the parts and repair manuals only made available to preparers, and only a small fraction of the spare parts that is not considered safety relevant also needs to be sold to consumers. And this contradicts very strongly with our demand for a universal right to repair, which, as I've said, includes spare parts availability for everyone. And to get an idea of what I'm talking about, you see here the lists of spare parts for product groups. And on the top, the green frame, you see the ones that need to be made available to everyone. And on the bottom, the ones that only need to be made available to professional repairers. What you can see is, yeah, most of them. And furthermore, these spare parts that you see on the bottom only need to be made available after 2 years the first unit of a model was placed on the market, which means only after at the earliest 1st of March 2023, because that's in 2 years' time. So the regulations don't really clarify who is a professional repairer. They do say that they need to have some proof of competence and they need to be insured. So yeah, now member states authorities should make sure that they make national registries, which are an option to implement repair registries, as inclusive as possible, and also, yeah, that they guarantee access to spare parts and repair manuals, for example, for community repair initiatives, who, as our experience shows, dispose of enough knowledge and experience to perform safe repairs, and at least for the case of Germany, are also insured for their repair activities. So the next point is that I've already mentioned that manufacturers must ensure that repairers need to receive the spare parts at least 15 working days after they place their order, and be a very long time if you have a broken washing machine at home, and of course you need it repaired as soon as possible, and it might lead to consumers then opting for a replacement because they really need the new machine and can't wait 15 working days for a spare part. Next point is software issues. So the regulations say that manufacturers must provide the latest firmware firmware, software, and security updates to professional repairers for the same amount of time that they also make spare parts available, which is generally a good thing, but they do not, or the regulations do not ensure that the manufacturers actually need to update their software for this amount of time. They just need to make them available, make available the latest update they have. So this might not be this huge of a problem with these product groups that are regulated right now, but this is something that really needs to be addressed when we look at future regulations, especially for like devices like smartphones or laptops, where software obsolescence, which means if manufacturers don't update or give security updates after 3 or 4 years, is a very big problem for the product lifetimes. So the last point I want to mention as limitation is the pricing. We know it's not easy to include, but we also know that the pricing of spare parts is a very big barrier to repair. In fact, for many consumers, it's the main reason for why they are not opting for a repair. So yeah, it's very important that spare parts are made available for a reasonable price that does not act as a barrier, and yeah, also that it makes it possible for professional repairers to offer their services for a price consumers find attractive. Something else that might keep the costs of repairs high or the cost of spare parts high as manufacturers are in these regulations to offer some spare parts as part of a bundle. So this means instead of just purchasing the one part that is broken, you might need to buy a bigger part that includes your broken part, and that might increase the cost for the repair. So yeah, you'll see there's still a lot to do. We really urge the EU to expand the repair provisions to more product groups. It would be great if we started with the ones that really would make a huge difference. If they're easier to repair, phones or laptops or printers. And yeah, but we should not just simply transfer these standards we have now unchanged, but make sure that they create an inclusive and discrimination-free repair market that is not controlled by manufacturers. And yeah, something else we'd really need is better information for consumers on the repairability of a product. So we saw that France already introduced a repair score this year that tells that tells the French consumers how well a product can be repaired and which actors can receive spare parts for how long. And yeah, we actually already see that manufacturers change their repair policy because they want to achieve more points on this repair score, for example, by providing more information than they did before. So yeah, we think that an EU-wide repair index could make a huge difference for repair in Europe and set an incentive on the one side for producers to put repairable products on the market and improve their repair policy, and on the other side, empower consumers to opt for repair-friendly products in the future. That's it from my side.
Thanks, Catherine. Thank you so much for setting the scene and telling us a bit about these regulations and the current limitations. Can you maybe stop sharing your screen, and then I'll give the floor to Stefan and Steve, who we are very happy to welcome today because it's actually the first time that we have professional repairers on an event like this, and we're very excited to hear what you have to say. If that's all right, I'm just going to give you a very quick introduction of who you are, what you do, and then of course if you want to add to it, you're more than welcome to. So Stefan Wangeroo is a trained technical craftsman from Germany who has spent several years repairing in the workshop, but also on site with customers. And he currently is a managing director at German business Wangeroo. And as such, he is advocating and looking for profitable repair markets to preserve the craft of repair. And then we have Stefan Neal, who is from the UK, who has been repairing home appliances professionally for over 25 years. He worked for 18 years on in-warranty repairs for the Electrolux Group before setting up his own company, London Spin Doctor, repairing washing machine, dryers, dishwashers, and ovens of all brands. So it's great because we're going to have two different perspectives on very different product category, but also different perspectives because you're not based in the same country. So thank you so much for being here. Regarding the questions, we actually had a minor technical hiccups in the Q&A, so I think you can only see the last one, but you can still ask them in the Q&A, and now you can vote for the different ones. So if you have one, ask one before, you can even resubmit it so that people can actually vote for those. And once again, it's great to see so many of you introducing yourself in the chat. So welcome, Steve and Stefan. How are you doing today? It's great to have you. Do you want to add anything to the introduction, anything specific, or should we dive straight into the concrete questions about today's issue?
Can I just add one small thing?
Of course.
And that is, when I started the job in 1994, every single appliance was repairable. We didn't write anything off. It's just how it was. Everything came apart, you broke it down, you fixed the broken component, you put it back together, it worked. Today, that's not the case.
That's actually a very good introduction, I guess, for the first question that we wanted to ask you is, what are the main barriers that you both currently experience today in your work as professional repairers? And Steve, as you're unmuted, do you want to maybe go first?
Sure. Well, it's mainly washing machines have sealed bearings in them. That's the most fragile part of the machine. You can't change them without changing the entire drum, the entire tub. It's a two-man job, so labor costs are high. For example, a drum and tub kit for a Bosch washing machine is £246. A bearing kit is 30. There's your problem. On the dishwashers, this is what we changed for decades. That's the heater. Now, it's a heat pump. This motor never fails, but the heater wrapped around it is unbelievably sensitive. So this gets thrown in the bin. This is £140. This is 30. This is the problem I'm facing on a daily basis.
Thanks, Steve. What about you, Stefan? What are the main challenges that you face today as a repairer?
Yeah, I think I'm with Steve. We have probably the same problems. We have the high price of spare parts. This is a big problem for us because a lot of products you can't repair because the spare part is more expensive than a new gadget, for example. And we have like thousands of difficult types of spare parts now. So in the past, we are also repairing old tube radios from the 50s and 60s, and they all have the same spare parts inside, or most of the parts are the same. And nowadays you have, like in for example, a navigation, we have like 50 or 60 types of USB plugs, or yeah, my English is not perfect, where you can put the plug inside, yeah, whatever. And this is a big problem for us because the spare part is expensive, or it's hard to find the right spare part for this gadget because the amount of different spare parts is just too big.
Thanks, Stefan, for that. So today, the title of this webinar is New Ecodesign Measures. You've heard about these measures and you know what they include. Do you expect that things will change and change for the better so that they will improve for you in your profession thanks to these measures, or not specifically? And this question is for both of you, but mainly for Steve, because these are the products that you repair on a daily basis. So do you want to go first?
Yeah, I don't really see they're going to make much difference to me, to be honest, because it's still not getting to the point of the cost of the parts. The parts are always available, but if you've got a dishwasher that you've paid £300 for and it's going to cost 220 to fix, you're not going to get it fixed, are you? Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Sorry, I'm struggling to unmute myself. And actually, maybe I'm going to follow up with Stefan on that. This regulation doesn't specifically apply to the products that you repair on a daily basis, but what do you think will be necessary? Like, do you think if a similar regulation would apply to the products that you repair, would it make sense? Would it improve your work on a daily basis as a repairer, or not specifically?
We also repair washing machines and so on. So we also already see an effect. For example, Miele, a German brand, they now put their documents on their homepage, like for 1 month. And so this is the first positive effect we see. And for the most white goods, like washing machines and so on, the situation in Germany isn't the worst situation. The other repair businesses, it's even worse. And so we have to change a lot and have to do more, like the legislation now is. And yeah, I'm positive because it's the first time that repairing and that repairing is in the politics, and they are talking about it. In the past, the politics told the legislation told to buy new machines, to throw the old working machines away because they take too much power, and it was not true. And now we have machines that are working for 2 or 3 or 4 years and then they crash. And now we have the situation. Yeah, you can save money or energy if you have a better machine, more modern machine, if it works 10 or 15 years like the old ones. But if it only works 4 or 5 years, you don't save money and you don't save energy. So I think we need more practitioners or practical in the process. It's not only a academic topic. We have a lot of practitioners in Germany and in Europe, I think, and normally nobody asks us. So for me, I'm very nervous, because it's a possibility to make our point public.
Thanks, Stefan. So we hear you, more professionals in the room when developing these policies. If we dive into the specific of this regulation, and starting with spare parts, a key aspect of the regulation is that they now will have to be made available by manufacturers for 7 years after taking a product out of a market, and even 10 years in the case of washing machines. So do you currently struggle to access spare parts for the products that you repair? And if this is the case, can you maybe give some specific examples of products that you've had to, give up on due to the lack of repair? Steve, do you want to go first? And so we can.
That comes up with basically circuit boards and things like that on the older machines, because they only make a certain quantity of them, and then once they're gone, they're gone. Hotpoint, you need to buy the circuit board and a SIM card reader to program the machine. You go onto any website and try to put in a model number that's over 5 years old, and it will say NLA, no longer available. So it's basically mainly circuit boards that are the tough one to get hold of when it's an older machine.
And what about you, Stefan? Are you struggling to find some spare parts, to get access to them?
Yeah, we are struggling with this very often. And I have a nice example, because we found a solution for it. We are repairing Thermomix. It's by Vorwerk. It's a German cooking machine. I think in Italy they call it Bimbi, and Bimbi or Thermomix. And the TM5, the second newest one, has a electrical closing mechanism for holding the top on the on the machine, and there is a really small part, plastic part, that is breaking like very often, and you don't get any spare parts by Vorwerk. And so we had to buy used or spare parts from Europe or some other countries, and the spare part was like 200 or 250 euros, and this was a big problem for us because it's very often the problem is very often, and so we put this small spare part to a company that does 3D prints, and so we can repair now for like 50 to 100 euro, depends on the workshop. We can repair this problem for like a third of the old price, and we earn more money with the repairing of this. And yeah, I think this is one of the big problems. The spare part isn't even produced by Vorwerk. It is produced by a small family company near to our company, where near Stuttgart. And we ask them, because they write big, like they are interested in the environment and they are social and so on. And we asked them if they can sell us the spare part. And they told us no, they are not allowed, because the original producer, forbids them to sell the spare part to us. And I think if this is possible in Europe or in Germany, I think this is the problem, because the law is against us. The law is on the side of the industry, and we have to change this. And so the spare parts is our biggest problem, because this is the big thing the industry is still having. If they can save their spare parts to be reproduced or to be sold by the OEM or something.
Yeah, which brings me to the next question about pricing specifically, because I guess a lot of the time these are related, and this is currently not addressed by the legislation. Can you maybe give some concrete examples of pricing which reduces the chances that people will choose repair instead of replacement? Stefan, do you want to go first maybe, so we change?
Yeah. There's a lot of examples for this. For example, we have the iPhones we repair, and you get because it's a free spare part market, unofficially, because it's not allowed, but in Europe we can get spare parts very fair. Let's say fair, because the Chinese, they are producing the spare parts and they sell it for a fair price. So I can buy one display in China to send to Germany with the express send, and it will cost between, let's say, 20 and 50 euro. The same spare part bought in Germany for a different brand, for example Samsung, will cost about 150 to 250 euros. And this is the reason why iPhones are repaired much more often than all the other brands, because we have an open spare part market. So if and the iPhones, they are even the most expensive smartphones. So this is a perfect new repair market. In Germany, we have like over 1,000 new companies in the past years that are repairing in the smartphone repair market. I think this is a very interesting situation, because it's the only market, like repair market I know, that growed in the last, let's say, 20 years. And yeah, it's the monopoly of the industry is a big problem for us. Myself, I had a dishwasher, and I know this problem is very often by Bauknecht, and the basket, I think, is the top and the lower basket, they both were not broken, but was old, and it started to rosten in German. I don't know the English word. And the both were broken, so I had to change them. The top basket was 250 euros, only some little bit metal and nothing. It's like other brands, they sell it for 10 or 15 euros, and the lower basket, you couldn't get it. So if you could get it, it was like 500 bucks for both baskets. you can get a new one for this price. And yeah, this is not attractive.
What about you, Steve, when it comes to pricing?
Yes, basically pretty much what I said earlier. It's the most fragile part of a washing machine is the drum and the bearings, and they basically pretty much cost what you can buy a new machine for. So if your bearings go in your washing machine, the chances are you're going to buy a new machine. Had you be able to change the bearings like the old days, you're going to spend £80 on the complete job and keep that machine going for another 5 years. And also the same with the dishwasher heat pumps. If you could just change the heater, you don't need to change the motor. There's nothing wrong with that motor. It's exactly the same.
Yeah, and Stefan, or maybe actually Steve, do you sometimes experience this issue of pricing in the sense that people maybe call you and then refuse to get the products repaired when they find out about the price?
Oh, yeah, every day, every single day. Yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges I have. I've got my costs are relatively low, but the price of the part's going to be 6 or 7 times what I charge. That's one of the biggest issues I face.
What about you?
Repair anything? It's just need the parts.
What about you, Stefan? Do you experience that sometimes? People who say, no, I don't want my products to get repaired because it's too expensive?
Yes, I think most people think this, and this is very sad because it's often possible to repair to a fair price if you have a look on the machine, because sometimes you can, or very often you can repair without a lot of spare parts. But I think the culture in Germany changed. We changed from the handcraft society to a throwaway society. So the opposite of throwing away is to keep it or to repair it, I think.
And Steve, just to go back to this issue of bundling, maybe can you briefly explain what bundling, you mentioned it before, but just in case some people aren't super familiar with what we mean by bundling of spare parts, and specifically because this is something that is currently not included in the regulation. So maybe can you give a brief overview of what you mean when you say bundling of spare parts?
What do you mean by bundling? As in
the you need to buy the bigger part instead of when the smaller one is failing. What you mentioned at the beginning with the
heat pumps, you mean?
For instance, or the drum, for instance, or yeah.
So when I started my job as an apprentice, they would give you the bearings to change because you're going to split down the whole machine, so you'll learn how everything works. It's the best way to train somebody. So the drum is a singular unit, and on the back was a thing called a spider. You used to have 2 bearings pushed in either side. You could remove that spider from the back of the machine, bang out the bearings, put new bearings in, reattach it, the machine's like new. Now, the whole outer tub and drum and bearings are glued in. So you're changing this colossal part for 2 small bearings that have failed. It's unbelievable that they started doing that. I remember coming to work one day to do a bearing change. I took the lid off the machine and I thought, hold on a minute, where are the bolts? And I called head office and said, excuse me, I've come to this machine, it's got no bolts in the tub. And they said, oh yeah, it's the new system, it's glued. You've got to change the entire tub and drum, everything. I just couldn't believe it. So there's no servicing involved, it's just boom, boom, done.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we dive into our next question, I see quite a lot of questions in the chat, and it'd be great if you could ask them in the Q&A feature, which is at the bottom of your screen. And you can also vote there for questions that have already been asked. My next question, because we're going through the different elements of this legislation, is repair information. As a professional, how do you currently access repair information, which could be manuals or any other type of information that you need to do your work? Do you use official information from manufacturers, or do you also rely on third-party sources? Steve, do you want to go first?
I use websites, obviously, but I have to have inside information from all of my engineer friends. I've got engineer friends all over the country that work for all the different manufacturers. So if I go into a newer product, I look online, it doesn't even come up. So I have to make calls and yeah, get information from a Bosch engineer or a Miele engineer, or whoever it might be. That's that's the only way I can get it. It's a relatively new machine. If it's a 4 or 5 year old machine, I can just go onto the website and most of it's there for me.
What about you, Stefan? How do you access repair information?
Yeah, we're a little bit in a special situation because we look for new repair markets in our company. So we are mostly the supplier of the information. So we just check new gadgets and we try to repair them, try to fix them, and then we do the documents. And we also use of course the manufacturer information or what you can find on the internet. It's like we use everything we get.
And we've heard from some professional repairers on these new regulations that they regret the absence of schematics. I never know if in English if it's schematic or schematics. Also schematics in the repair information which manufacturers now have to provide. Can you give some examples of repairs that schematics would allow you to do that you can't do now? Stefan, do you want to go first?
Yeah, it's a lot of I think it makes the repairing of every gadget easier because it will the search for the spare part make more easy, which takes a lot of time. Or what you sometimes you can't find spare parts because you don't know the exact measurements, or if, for example, a resistor gets burned from the electronics and you don't know what kind of resistor was inside. So if we have schematics, we can fix it. Or for example, the navigations I told before, there's like the USB plugs, thousands of types. So if you have the exact name of it or the exact configuration, it will make a repairing possible.
What about you, Steve? Access to schematics?
I don't think that really affects appliances in my world so much. I think it's more down the sort of more circuit boardy technology side of it, to be honest.
Okay, so that means we can move on to the final question, which relates to software, and then we'll move on to Paola. Regarding software, Steve, how often do you encounter problems that cannot be repaired due to software issues?
Do you know what? That's the one part of technology that has moved on phenomenally. Yeah, all the new modern appliances, I rarely have software issues. Back in the day, it was an absolute disaster because you used to do binary codes to program boards and all this stuff, and there was always all sorts of nonsense going on. But now, thankfully, that part of my world has disappeared. It's all brilliant.
Well, let's ask Stefan if he feels the same about software, especially for products such as mobile devices, for instance. We've recently been hearing about the threat of serialization or pairing by manufacturers of specific parts with serial numbers with specific devices using software. And this is potentially a huge threat to the future of repair. For example, for reusing existing parts or accessing third-party parts, not from manufacturers. Is this a problem that you experience already? And what do you think should happen? Because you mentioned, for instance, earlier, open spare part markets, but is it really open when we hear about software being used to prevent repairs?
Yeah, we have these problems because, for example, we have the new iPhone or the newer iPhones. They have this serialization, and you can't change some components. If you change it, there will be a information on the screen, or some features are not working anymore. And so this was the beginning of serialization, and we now have it with the new Thermomix, the TM6, the newest one. You can't change some parts because they have the serialization too. And yeah, we're a little bit afraid of the future because this can be done on every part. So even if you change like the, I don't know, everything, you can, because circuit boards are getting so cheap, and you can just block every repairing or fixing of any part or changing of any part. You can just stop it by this serialization. So in the moment, it's a little problem, but it's getting more and more, and we can see it in more and more areas.
Yeah, so it could become a huge problem in the future. Well, I just wanted to say a huge thank you for both of you. It's been great to hear about your challenges and your experiences. As a reminder, if you have any questions for Stefan and Steve, you can ask them in the Q&A, which is at the bottom of your screen. We'll move on to the full Q&A session at the end of all the presentations. And now I'd like to welcome Paola, who is the Deputy Head of Unit at the European Commission, Directorate General Environment. She has been working on circular economy policies since 2012 and has worked on the first and second circular economy action plans adopted by the European Commission. Hello, Paola, and
Hello.
welcome. Thank you for being here today. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Chloe, and thank you for organizing this sessions. Really very useful. I took notes of some of the points. It seems to me that in many cases it's really also an issue of enforcement. I think of the examples that Stefan gave, or also Steve on the availability of the spare parts. So it's all issues that you know, they are known, and of course we have been working on it and trying to devise what would be the best legislative answer or non-legislative answers to this, in order to make repair also not just a right, but a right that you can actually have, and that can actually become materialize in all possible situations. So as you know, from the policy perspective, we have said in the past years that we are going to act upon this, and with the new action plan and then the European Green Deal, there is I must say really a greater focus on these issues. What have we done, or actually what have we announced? We have announced this right to repair that needs to be understood. I think it has given rise to a lot of hopes, but at the same time some confusions. So I would like just to clarify what are the different strands of work along which we are trying to work to come forward and to really support the repairs. So you need to think of the right to repair at least in three lines. One, the one for products, and I will say a few things about, for example, the repairability scoring system that we're working on, and then I would imagine that a lot of the participants are also aware of, everyone who's following these topics together with ECOS also knows, but just a few developments. The second element is the one on production, so working with producers, and this is something that we need to set up, and working on extended producers' responsibilities. So we are coming up with a review of the EPR schemes in the coming years. Up until now, we were available with the proposals of 2018 only to come with essential requirements or minimum requirements for EPR schemes, because of course you know that different countries have different situations, different habits, and at the same time different products needs different type of characteristics. So for the moment we are at a minimum. But still, let's see what we can do further on this. And then the third is the one, the aspects linked to consumers. So on this, we are reviewing the consumer law. And I think by the end of the year, I mean, we're working very intensively this 2021, so not in DG Environment only, but certainly not in DG Environment as chef de file, how we say, but really with DG Justice, or the colleagues responsible for consumer law, to review and introduce wherever available possibility for example, additional information on availability of spare parts, but always general requirements, because then we will come with something more specific, as I said, product by product. And this elements, I can say again, something that what is cooking up for the moment on the specific of the product. So going back to this first strands that I was saying, the JRC, the Joint Research Center, has recently published a report on a repairability score. We have announced that we will look into repairability score, so communicating to consumers, defining first some minimum requirements for repairability, this along the lines of what is available right now through the Ecodesign Directive, but extending it to other products. So, and then communicating this to also the consumers. So the study has looked specifically at washing machines, vacuum cleaners, and laptops. We have also launched another study that is looking at the same features for televisions. As I said, we have information now on which could be some of these minimum requirements for information and how we transform or send it to the consumers. I would say that the immediate solutions would seems to work with the energy labeling as it is now. So just adding elements of information into that. But in fact, we're looking into different options. And I think to determine which would be the best options, we are also looking into a pilot or something that looks concretely into transforming into having an exercise and seeing how this repairability score would fit to specific products. But what are these options? We're looking actually as having aggregate scores for some limited parameters. And these limited parameters could be, for example, in capacity of dismantling or availability of spare parts, or again, upgradability. So all things that are known, but the solutions to communicate this to consumers could be on this specific parameters, like letters that gives it from A to E. So B would be good, A would be excellent on each of these specific parameters. Or the other possibilities would be to establish classes of performances. So depending on a general assessment, indicating that a specific product features as level 1 could be the worst or the best in capacity to be repairable, for example. So you understand that all these elements needs to be developed and are developed based on specific requirements. Then as a next steps, as I said, we needed to look into how we translate this for specific products. So doing some kind of pilot and then looking practically for some products. And then we need to see from a legislative perspective how we translate this. So very likely, we think that we would be ready at the end of the year, this year, when we come with the Sustainable Products Initiatives, which will establish and re-establish the rights to repair, for example, as a principles, how it can be, how it can happen in practice. So with some implementing acts, that again, product by product, as it is now for the implementing acts of the Ecodesign, will also indicate which of the options that I was mentioning would be chosen to communicate this this possibility of repair. Again, as I said, these are only topics or solutions that are discussed at the moment with ECOS and with all the different stakeholders, among others. There are a series of workshops that are ongoing and an online public consultations on sustainable product initiatives that touches upon this as well, so that I encourage everyone to participate until the 9th of June, if I'm not mistaken. So for the moment, I think this is what I can say. Again, thanks for all these useful, very practical situations and suggestions of where the obstacles are. We are aware we will hopefully able to come up with some solution that will help overcome some of these hurdles.
Thank you, Paola, for bringing the Commission's perspective on this. We have got a lot of questions, quite a few, so it shows that this is a very interesting topic to many people. So we've tried to gather them and aggregate them where they were quite similar, but there's still quite a few already. So I'm going to direct the question to one or two speakers specifically, but I'm going to ask you to be fairly brief, if possible, in your answers, so that we can ask as many questions as possible. but still remain in the time frame of this session. So the first one is for Paola, and is there any legislation at EU level or in a member states that you know of when it comes to repair and fashion and textile specifically?
Yes, I saw this question in the chat, and as a matter of fact, I think that for the moment, as I said, the products groups that we are looking for the repairability score, and again, I'm insisting a little bit on this because this is the measures, the tool that we are developing for making right to repair concrete. It does not foresee textiles, but what we are exploring in the different solutions, or to put forward in this textile strategies or in this textile communication that is has been announced for the end of the year or for the second half of 2021, is also precisely how to use the textile labeling regulation in a better way to communicate some information. Now you need to understand, and I'm sure you are aware that it depends, there are always several options, and when you touch upon legislation, you have to do an impact assessment. So we are not coming in the fall with impact assess measures. We will only sketch possibilities. So again, one issue could be to, in the review of the textile labeling regulations, include some aspects of repairability, or in completely different ways, trying with, again, implementing under the sustainable product initiatives, addressing textiles, to include some essential requirements that touches also upon repairability. So it's really all open for discussion for the moment.
Thank you. Thank you. The following one is also for you, Paola, is can a consumer easily find out which products have been placed on the market since the 1st of March 2021 and are therefore subjected to these new repairability requirements?
I'm sorry, the question is if a consumer can find easily products?
The new products that were put on the market after March 1st and that are therefore subjected to the new eco-design measures.
I would not be able to tell you. I mean, I think this would require some kind of specific monitoring through the market surveillance agency. So, and then keeping a record or a register that might exist. But then again, from our perspective, at the moment in DG Environment developing the policies, we are not looking at that. There's the market notification, so it's the normal procedures. But from a pure, if I understand, it's like a pure perspective of marketing almost. It's like if there was a website, as there is for eco labels products, then
or database, or any way. Okay.
I can find out. Oops, sorry. I can actually look into more information from colleagues that are actually working on this, because it is, as a matter of fact, it could be an interesting marketing measures. So then, but of course, you understand it would not be from the commissions to advertise some specific product. So we would always only be able to provide information about products that are registered or have not registered with this. So never really indicating you cannot do that, I think.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, if you hear anything, let us know. We'll include it in the blog post. The following one is for Stefan and Steve, and it's like an opinion question. Do we need to create a federation for professional repairers so they can have a louder voice on issues like spare parts, information, etc.? So it could be at the national level, at the European level. I mean, this is specifically for Stefan, related to Vangaro, of course, but it seems like what's happening in Germany is not necessarily the case in other European countries, and even more at the EU level, there's no such thing. So do you think that should happen? And maybe Stefan, do you want to go first?
I think this is already happening, because we have the Runde Tisch Reparatur, where Katrin is working, and so we are already connected, and we invite all the workshops to connect with the Runde Tisch, or the German workshops, because it's a German institution. But I think the problem is with connecting, even if all workshops in Germany, or the technique workshops in Germany or in Europe connect, we are like really small business, because our opponents is Apple, Samsung, they are like countries. They are so strong, and we have no chance. Not on our own. We need our friends or connected peoples that want the same. We need the environment safe people, and we need the chambers, and we need the politicians that want the local businesses to work on, the local small businesses to exist in future. If you want to stop the getting bigger and bigger and bigger of the big companies, we need to support the small ones, and this is one way to do it. And I hope the politics or the politicians will support us, because they really can support us if they just hear us.
What about Steve? What do you think about a federation of repairers?
I agree with what Stefan just said. We have to understand that the manufacturers want the consumer to keep calling them back to repair their appliance. It's in their interest because they're making so much money on their spare parts. So yeah, we need as much help as we can as independents.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because in the Right to Repair campaign at European level, I think this is kind of reflected in the membership, because we have environmental organization, but we also have repair network. And so I think it kind of relates to what Stefan was saying about these friends and these allies kind of pushing together for a common goal. Our next question doesn't have that many details, so I'm going to ask it as it was asked in the Q&A, and it's also for Stefan and Steve. And it's, what about 3D printing for some spare parts? And it was asked several times. It's a general question, but it was asked several times. Steve,
I know, because sorry, Steve, let's.
No, after you, please.
Okay, thank you. 3D printing is so popular in the discussion, but for us, as we repair different kinds of machines, it's not working out, because it's a lot of work, or it's hard to find the printing data. And if you have like 1,000 times the same problem, you can reprint the spare part you need. But if you have it like once a month or once a year, it makes no sense.
Steve, did you want to add something?
No, I don't need to. He's just covered it perfectly, because I was thinking, oh, that's genius. I can 3D print a door handle for a washing machine, but I'll probably only use 2 a year. So it's not worth getting the format and printing it just for 2. But yeah.
Now a question for Paola. It's a bit of a mix of a question. Will the new eco-design measures requiring design for repair help address this issue of bundling? And so I guess the question is, how can we deal with this, as this is clearly a very pressing issue for consumers and repairers, as Steve pointed out before. So I guess the next regulation, they're probably talking about the products that are currently being covered by investigated via eco-design.
Yes, so it's all in development, so I cannot answer to this question yes or no. I can answer that we're going through impact assessments, different studies, and looking at all this, and we are also having workshops where we address specifically some of these thematics. So I can only say that it's all under discussion, so we still need the different inputs. As I said, the new measure is foreseen for end of 2021. We are planning to have the impact assessment finalized by the end of the summer. So you understand that this is all. It's all being discussed. So I mean, it's not a question. I also wanted to just add 2 things. One, to the previous questions on the need for networking among repair services is also another line. So we're talking about the legal framework that the Commission can put in place, but at the same time, don't forget the softer measures. And again, you mentioned it's the communication campaign on one side, but also some supports to repair cafes, networks, and other initiatives of the sorts through the different funds. So we have it through innovation funds like Horizon Europe, through policy, cohesion policy, so regional funds, through LIFE, so the environmental program. So there are really many strengths where supports can be found. Of course, it takes time and it's not easy to get the supports. You need to organize on one side, but at least the Commission on its own side, it's trying to make available funds that would hopefully set up frameworks for that. So the soft measures. And then the last point on following the chat questions, the one on the report, it's a report from, it's not 2 years old. It's last, I said recent, but it's true, it's last year. But we are only recently trying to dig into it and then bringing it to the next level. So this is what I meant. So we've further, and there's one study that is ongoing. So this, of course, the results are not yet published. That is looking at, as I said, the television. So some specific. I can actually post probably the link to the report in the chat. I'm looking for it, and then I'll post it. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great, because I think it would be really interesting. Well, before you do that, I actually have another question for you, Paola.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, I don't know if you were working specifically on this within the Commission, but so the question is, independent repairers were banned in May 2019 from advertising their services on Google unless they choose to sell new products along with offering their repair services. Why is this situation still unresolved after 2 years, given repair is an essential aspect of circular economy?
Okay, I cannot reply to that because I don't work directly on that topic. So I can only promise that I'll get back to the participant through you, organizer of this webinar, with some information and update on where we are on that.
Thank you. Thank you. The following question is for Steve and Stefan. Do any of you have examples of sealed, difficult to access batteries that prevent a product from being repaired? Anything you can share on the price of batteries? Thank you. Battery question. Stefan, do you want to go first?
Yeah, we have this problem with the batteries, mostly on the electrical toothbrush, which is very problematic because sometimes you can't change the battery without breaking the sealing, and so yeah, you need to have the sealing too. And sometimes we have the problem with the navigations, because you have to cut the, or even a very nice example is the car key. We also repair car keys, the remote control of the car, and some of them you can't change the battery if it's a reloadable battery, and so we cut it with a knife and then we glue it again. It's okay because it's cheap, but it's not like perfect, and it not has to be produced like this. So a lot of batteries can be changed, but some you can't. And this is, yeah, it's a big problem because the owner of the car has to pay between 150 and 450 euro for a new key. It is a lot of yeah, it's work to do because you need to bring all the documents and to go to the original service station of the car. You can't go to a free workshop or something like this. So we only change the batteries, and it's like 49 euros. And so our customers, they are very happy, even if there's a small cut on the key. And this is, yeah, it's a problem, and it's getting a bigger problem. Even smartphones, the batteries, it's glued, but it's for a professional repairer, it's mostly possible to change, even if it's not so easy.
Which is particularly interesting also in the context of a new policy at EU level on batteries. Steve, do you have any thoughts on batteries and the price of batteries?
We don't use batteries on white goods yet. I guess we will do in the future.
Who knows? So my next question is for Catherine. How is the situation regarding national repair registers? Are they already finalized? Is there maybe a best practice from a member state who has developed a register including repair initiatives as repair cafes? So maybe Catherine, just before you answer that question, can you maybe remind the audience about this this thing about repair register in case some people are not aware?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as I said, the regulations don't specify exclusively who is a professional repairer, but they say that manufacturers can ask for a proof of competence and a proof of insurance for the repair activity if someone asks to get spare parts from them and information. But the regulations also say that if there is a national repair registry in place that includes a list of all professional repairers that are eligible to receive these spare parts, then the manufacturers need to accept this registry. But right now I don't know of any registry that has already been put in place, and so I also don't know of a best case scenario. It would be great if someone has some information on some countries, if they answered on the question in the chat. But I can briefly talk about what's happening in Germany so far. So in our view, as Untitled Reparatur, it's very important that we don't create new big bureaucratic structures and barriers arising in this process. So we propose that we use already existing databases we have. So we have this database of the business registry, where repairers are registered that offer their repair services on a commercial level. And then we also have this database of German repair initiatives that are all insured via the national network of Anstiftung. And with every actor who is part of these databases, we see that these both criteria of competence and insurance are existent. So we say we don't need a brand new registry set up, but if manufacturers want to know if they can or if they need to make available spare parts to a specific actor, then the solution should be that they send a request to that is then sent to these existing databases, and if there is an entry in these existing databases for this actor, the manufacturer needs to provide to proceed with the order. Because we really fear that building up a new registry will lead to new barriers, increase bureaucratic burdens, and also possibly increase the price for repairs, because who will pay for this new registry, we don't know yet. Maybe it's the manufacturers who then put the price on the spare parts, or maybe it's the repairers. It's a very tricky thing. And also in Germany, we're still in the process of discussing this issue, and there's no fixed solution yet.
Thanks, Catherine. If anyone has any insights on this, feel free to also share it in the chat, and we'll also try to provide more information on this when we publish the webinar with a blog post. My next question is for Catherine and possibly Paola, depending on who wants to answer that. It's the availability of spare parts and how this is defined in the regulation. So the question says, for instance, is there any territoriality principles? I have in mind the case of a manufacturer that has a single distributor in Europe. Is there any penalty if the parts are not available? So I guess it's how the parts that should be available are defined, and whether there's any penalty if these parts are not made available. I don't know if Catherine or Paola, do you want to jump on this one?
I would not be able to tell you this. I would need to investigate. As I said, I don't work specifically on that detail, so I'm happy to come back. Maybe Catherine knows.
Yeah, it would be interesting if you get some insight on this, Paula, because yeah, I only know that and the market authorities are responsible for do the controls on all of these regulations, so the national market authorities, and we also know that in the past there have been some problems with sanctions with regard to eco-design and eco-label regulations. So yeah, it's an important issue that we really need to make sure that all of these new standards we have now really are put in place, and that there are ways to sanction the ones that don't follow them. Yeah.
As what is sure is that since the new provisions are part of an existing framework, whatever is foreseen and what has been done up until now will continue and will be implemented in that line, at least for those measures that are, because there is no new provisions for that. I would say that it's exactly what is in place. What is interesting, what will be interesting, is to see again how enforcement really works. What are, and we are looking into that now, what are the gaps, and how with new provisions, so with this new sustainable product initiative, we are able to redress or to improve at least. And again, also now that I'm speaking and thinking about this, is probably also something that you need to look in conjunctions with the consumer law. So this review that is happening. So it's really I don't like to say big bang for the end of the year, because this raises enormous expectations. But I think in this case, I think you can really, you need to see what's coming up at that time. But I'll follow up on the existing situation as well.
Going from implementation back to community repair initiatives, Catherine, there was a question. Are you aware of any industry recognized / licensed / endorsed repair cafes currently?
Industry recognized repair initiatives.
Yeah, so not professionals, but community repair initiatives that would be licensed or officially recognized in some way by manufacturers.
I haven't heard of that. I know that some manufacturers do supply spare parts that are that the regulations only foresee for the professional repairers, that they supply them for everyone, and that every consumer can just order them on the website. But I have no bigger overview on how many manufacturers actually do that and how many spare parts are available this way.
Okay, I'll take the next one. Someone asked, are you working on something similar to what Louis Rossmann is doing with Right to Repair in the US with smartphones and laptops? And are you familiar with this issue? And yes, we are familiar with this issue. We are familiar with Louis Rossmann. We're in touch with him. And of course, it's a really inspiring initiative. The initiative that is pushing for, which is a direct ballot initiative, which works in the context of policymaking in the US, might not be immediately suitable at EU level, but we're really exploring all options, and we're trying to see how this potentially could be helpful at other non-EU levels. My next question is someone, and it's for Steve and Stefan, but maybe Paola, do you have any comment on that? Someone asked about the cost of labor to perform a repair, and ask if this is the main driver, is the main driver cost of labor to perform a repair, or is it the high cost of spare parts? What could we learn from other markets regarding this dynamic? And are we looking into this? And it's linked to another question that was asked, saying that countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh have repair shops everywhere, and that individuals there keep repairing machines for years, even after 20-25 years. Many appliances can still be repaired by these corner repairers, even if people might not talk too much or be that aware of this concept of right to repair. Steve or Stefan, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, for me, it's the labor costs are like unbelievably cheap compared to what the spare parts cost. So, if you call the manufacturer out, you're looking at over £100 call out, but you're looking at another 150, £200 for the parts. But if you call an independent, it's probably going to be half that, but you've got to still have the parts on. So it's always parts based, always. And I guess the technology they're using in India is quite old school. So everything is fixable. You know, their technology is not going to be anywhere near to what ours is. So they're not using bundled stuff like us anymore.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest problem for us is the spare part prices, and if we don't have spare parts to buy, normally repairing is mostly possible. But it's not that easy, because if we would have lower price for the work, we can also check more the circuit boards, or look for the exactly problem, like Steve told, like they do in India. They will not change the parts, they will really change the smallest part that is broken. And for this kind of repairing, I think Europe is too expensive, because I can't repair a washing machine for 3 or 4 hours. So I have to change, like often I have to change if it's not so often failure. I have to change a whole component and not the small resistor on the circuit board.
And there was a following up question on this, Stefan, is do you think the high price of mobile phone spare parts other than iPhone is justified by the higher labor cost in Europe, or are there other reasons for it?
No, it's not, because I can buy a iPhone display in Germany very cheap, and a Samsung display, for example, it's much more expensive. And it's not because the Samsung display is produced in Germany, it's not. And yeah, it's just because of the kind of market. On the one hand, we have a monopoly by the industry, and on the other hand, we have an open market. And this is the real reason, and this is what we need. We need a fair competition and an open market.
So that brings me to my next question, about spare parts as well, and the pricing of spare parts and non-official spare parts for, I guess, mainly Paola. And maybe if you don't know the answer to that, maybe you know if someone else in the Commission or someone else at EU level is working on something similar. And the question is, do you know of any specific new legislative measures at the EU level to establish a universal rate repair in form of access to non-OEM spare parts? The European Commission website is silent on that matter, and is anyone at the Commission or not the Commission involved in such legislative works? It is promised in, no, is it promised in the Circular Economy Action Plan? And it links to other questions that were asked about how do we ensure the support for non-official spare parts?
Okay, I will not be able to give you the details, but I know, as I said, that we, in the review of the consumer law, so an initiative that is foreseen for the end, it was foreseen for last year, then it was postponed of six months. It was announced for June, and now I think it's clearly going to be towards the end of the year. We are reviewing and revising the legislation. So as I said, it was this third strand of work to make the right to repair tangible, making it like a real, a tangible right, a material right that the consumers could bring to court. So there are parts of the review, the legislations that are looking into how to materialize this right a little bit more. But again, you will have to speak to my colleagues in DG Just actually to have more, or through me, I can give you more, I can get more information on that.
Sounds good. Sounds good. We have a lot of questions about spare parts. So I have one that is for all the panelists, and is, could setting up a maximum price on spare parts, such as, for instance, a percentage of the price of an appliances, or mandatory information on maximum spare parts price, could that help? Or what might a solution look like? I'm guessing what might a solution look like on this issue of the pricing of spare parts? So maximum price, I'm guessing, set by legislation, or do you have any other thoughts on how we can cap, I would say, the maximum price of spare parts? Steve, I see you're muted.
I think that's a great idea. Maybe, you know, if you bought a dishwasher, it would say heat pump, £180, drain pump, £20. Just list the parts, honestly. And, you know, buy a washing machine, have a label on it saying sealed tub. It's just, you know, something like that. Because I guess, I mean, I haven't done it, but maybe if you listed every single component in a dishwasher and then put the price to the part, I wonder how much that dishwasher would cost. It would probably be about £1,000, wouldn't it? Probably more.
Anyone else has any thoughts on maximum price for spare parts or any other option to address this issue of pricing?
I would say that it's an interesting idea because it goes on the side of the consumer, so then they can decide where they put their money. I don't know how feasible and how against other you know, principles of market, of free market this goes, but at the same time I would say that what we are looking, and I think we need to keep this in mind, we needed, at least this is the stand of the Commission, we needed to provide maximum information to the consumers to exercise its own right to buy products, so spare parts considered products in that sense, that he or she decides are sustainable or not for its own purse, if I can say so. So I'm not saying that only you know, spare parts that are costly can only be afforded by some people. That's not the point. It's not a question of hierarchy of sustainability that only some would be able to refer to. But at the same time, I think that what is important from a public authority is to allow the consumers to have the maximum information and transparency also on not just the cost, but on all elements, because of course you also have the issues of durability of the spare parts that is linked to the cost because it's linked also to the material. So in fact, the difficulty, it's always to find the right balance between the amount of information that you give to the consumers that doesn't confuse us in the end, the consumer. So then deciding which elements, which attributes are important that will help making the best decisions based on on everyone's sensitiveness to sustainability issues. So I think this is what makes it difficult. It's not the technological solutions of providing information, because then in the end, when you believe it's really the market who makes the price. And if you need to insist on consumers' demand, you know, from one side, we can work on awareness about sustainability. And we know, for example, just as a totally side issues, in the past years, we've seen products with the eco label rising. The amount of licenses of eco label have increased. So you can interpret this as a willingness of consumers to go towards more sustainable products. So if you translate that into buying spare parts, you would go, oh, fantastic, people are actually more into that. But then you need, when you as a consumer decided to decide on the cost, but also on what you buy for that cost. So
but maybe the French Repair Index is a good example, because in the French Repair Index, the cost of spare parts is one of the criteria that then end up making the grade. So yes, if the cost of spare parts is extremely expensive compared to the price of the product, then the grade of the overall product when it comes to repairability is lowered, and then the consumer can make up its own mind depending on the grade. So yes, just that could potentially be an option.
But that's the beauty of sometimes. So sometimes we need to have European legislations coming forward and before everyone else. But
and sometimes the other way around.
But exactly, sometimes it's actually interesting to see and to have national legislations as a test bed. What you need to keep in mind is that we cannot simply translate what works in a country into the other, even if the market is European or it's global, whatever you want. There are other factors that comes in. So the responsibility that we have is really to assess what works in one country for which reasons and trying to take the best out of it and then present it at European level.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm aware of time, so I'm only going to ask you 2 more questions. The following ones are a little bit technical, but the first one is for Steve. The question is, if I understand you correctly, having a heat pump in a dishwasher makes its repair more costly. In the past, they were fit with electrical resistance, easier to repair, but less efficient energy-wise. Could we have a repairable heat pump where you just replace the heater, but it's still energy efficient?
Hi, that would be absolute dream scenario. Because I'm just throwing away perfectly good motors on a daily basis. I do between 10 and 15 a week. My spares bill has quadrupled in the last 5 years. Like, it's unbelievable. All they've got to do is make it, just twist off. Hotpoint actually make them. So you have the motor and the heater and they twist together. Why Bosch, Neff, Siemens, all these brands don't do the same is unbelievable. That's all they need to do, because I'm throwing away a perfectly good motor on a daily basis. Yeah.
And then another question for Steve and Stefan. Do you think repairers will have to be retrained, or that the manufacturers will now provide their own repairers at a higher cost, as at the moment the labor is excellent value, but the parts are too expensive? Yeah,
I didn't get it.
No, I'm just rereading it. Do you think repairers will have to be retrained, or that the manufacturers will now provide their own repairers at a higher cost, as at the moment the labor is excellent value, but the parts are too expensive?
What, as in people being trained?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what the person meant, because that's just what they wrote. But maybe we can leave this one aside for now, as it's not the clear, and move on to the next one, as we only have a few minutes left. I'm just scrolling down. There's one for Paola. How do you see the role of repairers with shifting incentives in circular business models? The assumption here is that, for instance, a washing machine would be offered as a service, including repairs by a manufacturer. In that case, the manufacturer can offer the spare parts at production cost price, not retail price, but still need someone to come and fix a product.
What I can say is that, yes, I actually like that we include in this discussion the new business models, because it is all the part of the discussion that we are trying to have and to fill in with suggestions and with supports for the transition to circular economy. So I think it would make sense precisely to hit two birds with one stone. So when you have a new business model, and we are promoting business model, again, as I said, with soft measures for the moment in supporting them through the different funds program. When we are asked for new business models, that elements of repair are also included as part of that. So it's basically a new way of asking the consumers to use a product, not anymore as an owner, but as someone who has the product and then gives it back. There are plenty of examples, as a matter of fact, already of situations like this. I think you have the very old one that has been said for ages, and it's not just for the consumers. It was originally for B2B from Michelin, where you would not own the tires, but you would buy kilometers. So in that sense, who would repair the tire? Of course, all the issues is, since the ownership is linked to, it remains with the producers, of course, they are also facilitated in setting up a system to get back. So all this reverse logistics somehow of repairability. I think we needed to expand that also to the business models, but at the same time offering the possibility to, and this is what we were doing, we were saying before, the repairability cafes or these networks of repairs, the possibility to enter into the chain of the repair services and exist per se, and offering their own business models of repairability. I think there are several studies that have discussed, that have explored this. Some colleagues in DigiGrow are developing these new studies for business models. But I also saw, for example, depending on the products, there are business models that functions better than others, and in some cases maybe the repair services would not fit. I would say that it is in the interest of the repairs to seek how they can develop their business models and take advantage of, for the moment, the supports that that is given, because it's clear it's a really a new segment for even I think as a normal consumers, you would tend to go to a repair services that is linked to the producers. You know, we're talking about behaviors here. So then it's the first immediate step. You go back, you bring it back to where you purchase it or to whom you purchase it, because, you know, behaviorally, you know that it is going to be fixed. The producer knows the whole thing. But then we need to step in and then change this maybe mindset by offering something better, or something that equals the offers of the producers. And by doing so, in some cases, you needed to offer, I think, some support as a community. I think there's also needed to team up with local authorities, because I think also one of the main issues, you would know better than me, but one of the main features of a repair services that would allow consumers to go and pick it is how easy it is to reach the repair site, or to have someone coming and repair your services. So I think that the dimension, the geographical dimension, is also coming into factor. So maybe teaming up with public authorities and offering repair services, for example, in close to waste recycling facilities could be one good way for the public authorities at local level to support repairs.
Yes, I see your point. As we already 2 minutes after the end of the webinar, I was wondering if anyone had any closing remarks, anything they really wanted to add that they haven't had a chance to do, and if not, we'll wrap it up.
Hi, I've just got one request, and that is, I think the manufacturers should list every fault code in the user manual, not just 2 or 3. Because then the consumer can look at the error codes, say, oh, it's the heat pump, it's going to cost, look on the internet, it's going to cost about £180, and say yes or no to do it. Because at the moment they have to call out an engineer who's going to then go into diagnostics and then see. It would save a lot of time and money. Does that make sense? Like, they only list 3 or 4 fault codes. But if they listed all of them, the consumer would know exactly what was wrong with their appliance themselves. And then they can gauge whether they're going to spend the money on it or not.
Yeah, I think adding to this, I think it would be very important that repair information include information about how difficult a repair is and what knowledge I need to transform it, the specific repair, so that I, as a consumer, can by myself decide whether I want to do the repair by myself,
yeah,
or whether I want to bring it to a professional repairer who has the knowledge that is needed for this repair. But that it's not in the hand of the manufacturer to decide this, but that it's in, yeah, the consumer.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's been incredibly interesting. Thank you for our panelists for sharing their thoughts. Thanks to everyone in the audience. There has been so many questions, and I'm really sorry if we didn't get to your question, but we wrote all of them down, and we will be doing a wrap-up blog post where we will try to answer as many of the questions that were asked as possible. It's a topic where there's a lot to cover, obviously, so we don't have the time to do it all in 1 hour and 30 minutes. But a massive thank you to everyone. As usual, if you want to support and subscribe to the campaign, you can do so by subscribing to the newsletter and be kept in the loop. You can also donate to the campaign, so we are able to organize future webinars like this one, and we can keep our work advocating for universal right to repair regulations across Europe. And also feel free to suggest any future topic for future webinars. It's been great to hear from some of you after the first one that we did, the suggestions that they had for the second one, which brought us here today. And of course, the webinar will be shared as well. So in case you missed some bits, so in case you want to rewatch it again, this will be possible. And I wish everybody a lovely day, and thank you so much for attending.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.